Welcome to Fireside Giants. My name is Alex, my co-host here, Anthony Rivardo, and today we want to give you guys a little bit of information on Brian Daboll and Brian Flores, the two double Bryans the Giants are considering as the next head coach of this team. Now, this is a big decision. Of course, we got Joe Schoen, which is phenomenal. We're all really excited about what he brings from Buffalo. Right-hand man to Brandon Beane has done a phenomenal job piecing together not only tremendous draft classes, but also retaining guys, paying his own players, trying not to go outside of this cultural kind of framework that Buffalo's put in place. And I think that's a really great sign of what the success he's brought to that organization, along with Brandon Beane and the tremendous coaching staff they have there. But we want to discuss Brian Daboll, what he would bring to the Giants, why he's the leading prospect currently as the next head coach, and Flores, and why John Mara kind of felt the need to go out of his way and let him know he was a serious candidate personally. That was really interesting to me. There was a report that indicated that. And I don't really know why. I don't really know what the connection is there, but it is interesting. And I do want to have a conversation with Anthony here about what the difference between those two coaches are and which one we prefer and why. But Anthony, before we dive into the good stuff, how you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing great, and it seems like it might come down to Brian versus Brian for the Giants head coach position. So, of course, they're interviewing a lot of people. They interviewed Lou Anarumo, I believe that's how you say his name today, Bengals defensive coordinator for the head coaching position. They're going to do like a full sweep. They're going to interview as many candidates as possible, which is exactly what the Giants did for the general manager position. But it seems like there are two front runners for this job, just like there were for the general manager position. In the end, it came down to Joe Schoen versus Adam Peters. They went with Joe Schoen, and Joe Schoen was the man to beat from the very start. Now, according to all these reports that we're seeing, Brian Daboll is the man to beat. He's the front runner, and his rival, like Adam Peters was to Joe Schoen, is Brian Flores. So these seem like the two most likely head coaching candidates for the Giants, but also both of these candidates have a lot of interest around the league. Many other teams with head coaching vacancies are eager to get their hands on both Brian Daboll and Brian Flores. So it's going to be really interesting to see what ends up shaking out for the Giants at that head coaching spot. But I'm excited to discuss these two guys because I think there's a really good chance one of these guys could get the job.
Absolutely. Now, obviously, I want to dive into Brian Daboll right off the bat. He is the leading candidate right now for obvious reasons, the connection to Joe Schoen, working with him over the past 4 years. And it's not the fact that he's been working with Joe Schoen for 4 years, which definitely has a big factor and a big impact in this decision, but he's also a great coach. You know, he's done wonders for Josh Allen. If you want to look at the recipe, the ingredients for building an elite quarterback, go look at what Brian Daboll has done with Josh Allen. He has worked with him every step of the way to develop him as a quarterback. That's the type of head coach you want. That's going to go in and help you develop the most important position of any on a football team. And you know, this is kind of some background on Brian Daboll. He's 46 years old, currently the Bills offensive coordinator since 2018. Previous experiences, Alabama OC in 2017, Patriots tight end coach 2013 to 16. But he doesn't only have the Alabama and Patriots kind of background. Of course, we know Joe Judge had a similar background. He also was the Chiefs offensive coordinator in 2012, offensive coordinator in 2011 for the Dolphins, OC for the Browns in 2009 to 10, Jets QB coach way back when. So he's been the OC for the Browns, Dolphins, Chiefs, and Alabama, and now the Bills. He has an unbelievable amount of experience as an offensive coordinator. Now, a lot of Giants fans right now want an OC or an offensive-minded coach as their next head coach, which I agree with because the offense is kind of taking over the NFL. Of course, defense will ever be important, but offense and the Giants desperately need to take a step forward in that direction. And Brian Daboll obviously has the experience to get it done. There was one quote that I really liked from The Athletic that said, if you're looking for one of the most important people behind Josh Allen becoming one of the league's best quarterbacks, look no further than Brian Daboll. Early in Allen's career, Daboll helped isolate little problems to fix and has worked hand in hand with the quarterback to create an offense around him. Daboll is a creative play caller who listens to his players and staff and doesn't stubbornly stick with an offensive scheme if it isn't working. That is what Joe Judge and their head and the coaching staff did this past season. He identifies an opponent's weakness and will change his offense to attack it each week. He has a strong relationship with all of his players and fellow coaches and can be a good leader that people respect. The only question about Daboll is a common one for coordinators. Can he relinquish control of the offense and be more of a CEO head coach? His adaptable personality indicates that he is certainly capable, Anthony. When you're looking at that kind of quote, when you're looking at that kind of review of an offensive coordinator, how does that make you feel about Daboll as a prospective head coach?
I mean, this is my number one head coaching candidate. Brian Daboll is my number one head coach. I love everything that he brings to the table. You look at the way that the Bills have turned their offense around in recent years. Before Daboll got there, they just weren't that good. And then he gets there, they get in Josh Allen, and the development of Josh Allen has been utterly insane. We've never seen anything like it. In college, wasn't really playing at some elite school, was not an elite prospect by any means coming out, goes to the NFL Combine, throws a ball 70 yards. People say, oh, maybe he should be a top 10 pick, actually. Ends up being a top 10 pick. The Bills even trade up to go get him. Shout out Joe Shane for being involved in that, right? They get Josh Allen. First 2 years of his career, he sucks. He is by far the least accurate quarterback in the NFL. And you know what everyone used to always say? You can't teach accuracy. All the other stuff you can probably teach, but you're either accurate or you're not. And it's usually so hard for quarterbacks to get more accurate. Well, Josh Allen proved that that's just not true. You can get more accurate. Brian Daboll helped him get more accurate, and the relationship between Brian and Josh is really strong. You can read up on a lot of stories about that where those two are really just like best friends. And a lot of people say for Brian Flores, he's the player's coach. I think that can be said about Brian Daboll too. I mean, he's also the player's coach. He has a great relationship with all of his players, like a real friendly, familial relationship with his players. And of course, Josh Allen, first 2 years sucks. Second or third year, he is second in league voting for MVP. And then, of course, this season, he is playing in the divisional round against the Chiefs tonight. He wins that, going to back-to-back AFC championship games. We're talking about one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, ran through one of the best offenses in the NFL, which is organized by Brian Daboll. It's a high-scoring offense. They've been top 3 in scoring in the NFL for both of the past 2 seasons. Brian Daboll has really let this team reach new heights with this offense that he's constructed here. A lot of passing concepts. They love to throw the football more than running the football by a wide margin. They love to throw the ball. They almost only throw the ball, like exclusively just throw the ball. And I love that. I think it's really forward-minded. It's cutting edge of football. And I think it's really, really smart stuff. And I just think that Brian Daboll, as a coordinator for sure, is elite. But I think he also has that leadership capability to be a really good head coach.
And I would concur with that. I think Daboll, the obvious connection, like I mentioned before, with Joe Shane is something that I really like. I think that a head coach and a GM have to be in sync at all times. We saw that with Joe Judge and Dave Gettleman, that it was not in sync at all times. They were making kind of weird decisions at times. There was kind of a lack of communication, a lot of stuff coming out after the fact, obviously. But look at Brian Flores over on Miami. Him and the GM had serious problems. He had bad relationships with a lot of people in the front office, and it deteriorated over time, and it just became a point where they were like, we got to get rid of him because nobody here can actually work with him. You don't want that, right? Daboll is the kind of guy, he's a Western New York guy. He'll show up to practice with sweatpants. He's the kind of guy that people respect because he's so knowledgeable and is disciplinary, but he's also a good dude. He's wants to have a drink with you after the game. That's the kind of guy he is. And I think that people will find that comforting because Joe Judge and him are exact opposites, right? Joe Judge is I'm going to come in here and rule you like Stalin. And Brian Daboll is going to be I'm going to come in here and rule you like myself. I'm just the guy. I haven't, I'm not Nick Saban. I'm not Bill Belichick. I'm Brian Daboll, and this is who I am. Joe Judge kind of tried to be a little bit of everybody, and it just didn't work out, obviously. We wanted it to. He spoke a big game, and we really fell for it. But we learned a big lesson from that. It's about action. It's about production. It's about what's on the field and not what you say off of the field. So that's something that we definitely took away, Anthony and I specifically. So, and I know a lot of other people kind of fell into the trap as well. But we want Brian Daboll to really be, this head coach because him and Joe Shane will be working hand in hand. They know what works. They know what the culture looks like. They're coming from a Super Bowl contending team that could win a Super Bowl this year. We'll see what happens on Sunday night. So if you're watching this on Monday, you may already know the results. But they are contending at the point of this recording. So it's exciting to see Brian Daboll coming from that type of atmosphere, that type of culture, and really bringing it over. Flores, on the other hand, is entirely different, right? He's coming from Miami, really, really struggled to piece together an offense. Obviously, he was the Dolphins head coach from 2019 to 21, Patriots linebacker coach, safeties coach. He is a defensive maestro. If the Giants want a defensive maestro, he is definitely the way to go. But I think they want a little bit more of an offensive mindset. So Daboll is the better move. But you're looking at Flores, the offense is definitely a problem. He's fired 3 offensive coordinators or 4 offensive coordinators. He's had 3 different offensive line coaches. The Miami Dolphins had the worst offensive line in football this past year. It's definitely rough for that Miami team and in terms of the offensive side. And he had really bad relationships with Tua Tagovailoa, some other players, the media, like, just down the freaking ladder. He had bad relationships. I don't know why. I don't know if he came to New York, it would be any different, or if he would be, totally fine. He could absolutely be totally fine, but that's a huge red flag for me. And because of that, I have to put Daboll ahead of him, Anthony. Do you think that is the biggest red flag for you, is just a lack of communication and relationship building for him in the Miami organization?
Yeah, my biggest thing with Brian Flores, biggest flaw is the coaching staff overturn. Of course, multiple offensive coordinators, multiple offensive line coaches. We saw that didn't work with Joe Judge. It didn't work with Brian Flores. I mean, yeah, they found some good success, and he absolutely is a leader. He is a player's coach, but unfortunately, all of that coaching staff overturn does create a lot of conflict within the coaching staff, a lot of conflict within the players, a lot of conflict just within the organization as a whole. So there are definitely red flags for Brian Flores. I understand where people are coming from, where they're really excited about the prospect of Brian Flores as head coach, but he's not a perfect head coaching prospect, okay? He's not the perfect candidate. He didn't do everything right in Miami. There were things that he kind of did wrong. And I know that there's the rumors about Brian Flores and Deshaun Watson being in constant communication. They want to team up and they're trying to do it with the Giants, which I think is super interesting. But there's a whole lot of question marks there. I don't really want to get too deeply into that, but I don't think that move would be very welcomed by a lot of Giants fans, and I'm not sure I would welcome it either. But there are a lot of great things to say about Brian Flores. I mean, if you look at what the Miami Dolphins did this year, they really started the season off poorly, very badly, but they went on a 7-game winning streak. Now, that's not easy to do. Of course, they still ultimately missed the playoffs, but Brian Flores did lead that team. He did captivate the attention of the players, and he did organize that team to win those games. He was a great leader down the stretch, and he knows how to really get the most out of the players, is what I notice. Out of Brian Flores, more than anything, he does get the most out of all of his players. They'll overperform, right? Like, they'll exceed expectations. They'll develop. Like, I do see players just gravitating towards Brian Flores. They love him and they really do enjoy playing for him, and they play their heart out for him. And I think that's important. I don't know if the Giants have had that in their last two head coaches, right? Were the players really playing their hearts out for Pat Shermer? Definitely not. For Joe Judge, maybe for a time, but after a while, seems like they all kind of gave up on that. So Brian Flores was able to keep the attention of his players the entire time. A lot of the players were very confused when he was fired. A lot of the media was confused. A lot of the fans. It was a confusing firing. And I do think Brian Flores is quickly going to get another head coaching job. And if it's with the Giants, I'm not going to be upset about it. But no, it is not my number one option. I think that there are more positives that you could say about Brian Daboll, and I think that there are less negatives you could say about Brian Daboll. I think there are quite a few negatives around Brian Flores, or at least more intense negatives, like the coaching staff overturn, like the drama with him and Tua Tagovailoa. I mean, that's something that you just never want to see, because what that really stemmed from, the drama between him and Tua, it stemmed from a lack of communication and a lack of a good, strong relationship between the head coach and the general manager. Because the general manager went ahead and said, we're going with Tua Tagovailoa. Brian Flores said, I don't want Tua Tagovailoa, and I'm going to make that known. I'm going to make sure Tua
That's so
knows I
bad.
want nothing
So
to do
bad.
with him. That is a problem. Now, if Joe Shane and Brian Flores are on the same page, and Joe Shane hires him, then okay, I'm going to trust in Joe Shane. I'm going to believe in Joe Shane to make the right decision with the head coach, and then they can help find the quarterback together. But just that little conflict that Flores had with the previous GM that he worked with is a major red flag. It is super concerning, and that's ultimately why I look at Brian Daboll. I know he's got a good relationship with Joe Shane off the bat. That's where I tend to lean towards in this head coaching race.
Right, and Tua's a good dude, which is like why he came out and said publicly, "You don't talk to people like that." Regarding what Flores said to him, and another red flag I'm going to throw out there. You can disagree with me, or people in the comments. I don't like the fact that Brian Flores was pushing so hard for Deshaun Watson while these legal investigations are still ongoing. You know what I mean? I feel like maybe let those things settle down before alienating your quarterback and trying to trade for Deshaun Watson. I feel like that might be a better move than going full blast and destroying relationships with everybody, trying to get Watson, who the deal was going to include that we're not going to give you picks if he ends up being charged with all these things legitimately and taken to court. Like, he's going to have to deal with this eventually. It's kind of gone quiet for a little while now, but eventually, like, who knows what's going to happen with all of these cases against him or whatever. I feel like that, is a kind of a big red flag for me. So, and in the same time, if Brian Flores comes here, he signs a contract and he demands all of a sudden, I want Deshaun Watson. I don't care what it takes. And everyone's like, whoa, dude, like that, we don't want Deshaun. We talked about this before. Like he kind of is a wild card a little bit after that whole debacle. I would rather stay away from that. I don't want Deshaun Watson with the pending legal stuff. If he's acquitted of all that stuff, that's another conversation that we can have another day. But right now, miss me with that. I don't want to get involved in the Deshaun Watson, situation right now because he might even get suspended and miss time. Who knows? But at the same time, he's a top 5 quarterback in the NFL when he's playing. Hasn't played in over a year. Let's figure out how to rebuild right before we take a freaking nuclear shot at a quarterback who could be going to freaking prison for all we know. You know what I mean? Like let's temper our expectations there. Brian Flores going all in, alienating Tua and shitting on him was not something I wanted to see. So you can let me know what you think about that. Definitely open to have a conversation. I'm intrigued to hear what you think. But that's personally how I feel. Just let the legal situations. We've dealt with the Josh Brown stuff. If you're a Giants fan, you remember the Josh Brown stuff and the domestic violence. I don't want anything to do with that stuff right now. Like the Giants need to get some good, positive energy in here and not go full into the criminal activity of people. Like that's not what we need at the moment. So that's kind of how I feel. I feel you probably feel the same
I
way.
totally agree with you. I think we're on the same page about this topic. And I will say, I think John Mara is on the same page about this topic. You mentioned the Josh Brown thing. That was a major shit stain left on the organization of the New York Giants. Like, that didn't wash away easily, especially not for John Mara. He was horribly embarrassed by the way that he handled that, and he should have been. He handled it really poorly. He covered it up. Like, we know what was going on there. And so I don't want to get too far off topic, but the Josh Brown thing is relevant because John Mara has been outwardly, publicly embarrassed by his handling of that situation. I doubt he goes ahead and repeats history and goes after a guy with some off the field red flags here because he dealt with that with Josh Brown. I don't think John Mayer is going to deal with that again with Deshaun Watson. So ultimately, I don't think Deshaun Watson will end up as a New York Giant because I don't think that John Mayer would ever sign off on that.
Yeah, I agree. So I think the consensus here is that Brian Daboll's probably the right move, guys. Love to hear your opinions below in the YouTube comments. And if you are listening on Spotify or Apple, make sure to hit that subscription button. As always, much love to the fans. Make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube as well. More content to come. Tomorrow, this whole week, we're going to be making videos about the head coaching candidates. They're interviewing guys daily, so we'll give you some more information on all those guys. Tomorrow, we'll cover maybe Dan Quinn or Lou from the Cincinnati Bengals. And anybody else that they're bringing, Leslie Frazier too. So we have a couple guys to catch up on. So we'll make sure to give you all the information you possibly can need and consume regarding those candidates. But much love as always. Enjoy this weekend of football, and we'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Giants episode.